How's it going, everyone? My name is Nick Clement with Access 4, and welcome to another episode of MSPland. Today is a special one, and it's not because I'm not in it, but because of the conversation that Access 4's Sales and Marketing Director, Pete Eldon, has with Dan Williams, founder of Independent EQ and the social enterprise Without Fear. In their chat, Dan first speaks about his background running MSPs and the evolution of managed services, before taking a personal dive into Dan's struggles with mental health, the importance of being vulnerable, and what led him to start Without Fear, a not-for-profit dedicated to mental health and wellness. He also highlights practical tools and advice on how you can take care of your mental health and how best to support others. If any of this resonates with you, you do not want to miss this episode. Let's get into it.
Welcome everyone. I am super excited for this particular podcast. I've made sure that when I spoke to Dan Williams, who I have beside me, that he was going to be able to do this. I wanted to come down and do this myself because I've known Dan for many, many years. Dan was my customer. I was proud to say that I was supporting him in a previous life, and we built I feel, a really nice relationship, and I am honored to call Dan one of my friends, and we've had lots of deep and D&Ms at various events around the place. And you know what struck me from the very start, even, I don't know if you remember, it was an ARN event, I think it was in Sydney, one of the award events where we actually were at the same table together. So bad luck to you on that one. But we had such a deep conversation right away that wasn't industry based. It was a really nice conversation about some of the things I'm passionate about. And you know, you'll hear from Dan's voice when I shut up in a minute, but he's got a very soothing voice and he's a very good listener. And from that point there, I thought it was someone who was really interested. I wanted to get to know a lot better. And I was trying to sell him something as well. So you got to do that. But so Dan Williams, I'm going to embarrass him to say it, is an absolute legend of the industry. Has been around as much as his looks don't give it away for a very long time within the MSP community, and now is really supporting MSPs and other businesses around bringing their business to the next level with EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System, and you're a coach for that. And then one of the areas that I'm really excited to talk to Dan about is Dan took the initiative and set up his own mental health awareness charity, which is called Without Fear. And I've had the pleasure of listening to Dan talk on a couple of occasions now formally around Without Fear, and was had many conversations around it informally as well. And his passion and wealth of knowledge of that is really, really powerful. So we want to talk a lot about that today and make people aware of that. So, mate, thank you very much for giving up your time. And
thank you.
What I'd like you to do, if you could, is give a better introduction to yourself than I've just done. Tell us a little bit about your history.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Pete. And I've got lots of memories of those conversations together, and a couple of them started with shots of tequila. So
they started with it and ended with it generally, isn't it? The book ended?
Yeah. I don't remember the end often, but I'm grateful nonetheless for those conversations. And yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about both of those things. You know, I'm still passionate. You know, I spent over 20 years in the IT industry, majority of those in MSP land, which it became known as.
Which is the name of our podcast, so very well.
I saw that on the way in.
Yeah. I love working with professionals, I really do.
And, you know, I learned so much, and one of the beautiful things about that industry is that it's a real community, and carried a lot of those relationships, you know, into my life coaching MSPs predominantly. I do work with lots of other businesses as well, but I'm pretty passionate. I've got a soft spot for those people. I often say that, you know, IT business leaders and owners are my people. So I never asked for their permission to say that, but here we are nonetheless. And, you know, and all that is sort of accumulated experience and working with people and as peers, competitors, if you like, and vendors. You know, there was a general undercurrent of people going through things, which kind of culminated to where I am at Without Fear, which I look forward to talking more about that. But, you know, we've our paths have crossed lots of times, and, you know, to be able to sit down today and talk with you a lot of our conversations we probably didn't want people privy to. So we'll see where this goes.
I just had this horrible flash then when you said about some of our conversation, like there's certain stuff that's off limits,
Yeah,
right? There's a couple of overseas conferences. We'll park that.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that when we're not recording.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in talking about your time as an MSP. So I'm interested to know your journey from where you started, because yours is one that you ended up as MD of a significant MSP, but you didn't start there, right? So
Yeah.
And one of the other things that I think should be highlighted and is kind of unique in the industry is your tenure in that business as well. There's generally one of those owners that were there as well. I know you were, but you didn't start off as that.
No,
Can you tell us that your time at PowerNet and from day one, Dan, and then where you ended, and talk a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, it's funny that day one is etched in my mind forever. So I look forward to telling you that bit. Pardon me. So, I in high school I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and late 90s IT was this thing, and I was right into grunge music probably more than being at school, and Soundgarden, Nirvana, and the like were a prominent fixture in my life, and then occasionally I'd go to school.
Yeah.
So when I was at school, I had, it was back in the day where they had the computer room, and I went to a pretty low socioeconomic school.
So Commodore 64, or what are you were like Spectrums?
It was probably like a 186.
186. I'm sure my age, right? I used to start off with Sinclair Spectrums. This is how.
Yeah, I'm familiar. Yeah. Yeah, and so it was a little bit more advanced than that, only a little bit though. And at school, I started to think about, and often we got encouraged to think about what we should be doing or would be doing. And all I knew was that I wasn't going to university, that I was going to work. And it made sense to choose IT. And I bounced around a couple of jobs early days. I worked in local government and, realized that wasn't for me either. In their IT department, I went to Compaq, which were bought by HP, and that wasn't a good experience, but I learned a lot. And then one day I applied for a job, pretty sure it was Seek, early days Seek, and rolled up to this office in Richmond, just around the corner from where we are right now.
Really? So, because our office is in Richmond here, so that's interesting. This is your old stomping ground.
Yeah, and I love it. So I went past the Swan Hotel on the way here. Spent a few sessions there. And then, so long story short, on the sort of preamble, I applied for a job at PowerNet and started working there, and there were three of us. And
in the whole business at that point?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so there were some people that I kind of worked there, like they would show up every now and then. I think one of the guys, he worked with us and then worked at the video shop back when they were a thing.
So it
was a bit of a casual workforce, but, I was thrown in the deep end. I played football at the time as well, and the founder, Jacob Olsen, the founder
Shout
of
out
PowerNet.
to Jacob.
Yeah. So, a legend, a genuine legend of the industry.
Very much.
And he basically said, when can you start? And the day before, so the Saturday actually before starting, I broke my ankle playing football. And I went to the hospital. I don't think I've ever told this story before. I went to the hospital, and they said, "Oh yeah, no problem. It's broken. It's clean. We're able to sort it out. Just go and get you fitted for a cast." And I said, "I can't have a cast on my ankle. I'm starting a new job." And so I literally turned up first day with a moon boot on. And before I'd even set foot in the place, Jacob basically said, "Here's where the job that needs to be done. Off you go." So it was almost a week before I actually entered the office.
So you're hobbling around in IT. How old were you at this point?
21.
Right.
Yeah.
So you are raw.
Yeah. And so, it's when I tell that story, it just reminds me of just how in demand those services were back then. And back then I think you were called a system integrator, I think.
Yeah.
And you were basically installing PCs, and I loved it. The fact that I was in day one, right in the mix of it. And, I was in that business for 17 years, and, I experienced all the highs and the lows, and really early on became an owner in that business, had an opportunity to to buy into the business, and then had repeated opportunities to increase that stake over time. And to see something from 3 or 4 people in a video shop, Guy, shout out to him if he's listening. I won't say his name in case it gets back to him. Through to
Did he help you out with the return fees? Like, because you need a bro to hook
really
you up.
good for a recommendation, actually. I can remember. Yeah. I don't remember the films, but I can remember him making good recommendations. And the evolution of that industry from 21 through to 17 years later, knocking on the door of 40, leaving that business. We grew from 3 or 4 people to nearly 100 people.
It's amazing.
Several mergers and acquisitions, from questionable income through to significant income as a business. And the rise of the MSP was one of the most impactful times in that business.
Well, it's an interesting point as you say that, right? Because when I think about your tenure there, it really aligns up with that rise of the MSP. So, your time from 21-year-old system integrator or tech on site through to MD and you leaving the business, it very much goes with the maturity of MSPs. I had a business, mid 2000s, which was voice and data at the time. But when I look back, we were an MSP. We just didn't have a name for it, right? We just started organically. Well, we'll do some computers and do the phone system. And when you look back now, it's like, oh, that was the classic MSP. Yeah. So what have you seen over that time, right? From that day one, what was that evolution? Were there any key points? Well, when did you actually start to call yourselves an MSP?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when that happened, but I can remember the series of events that sort of led to it. Back in the beginning, you would sell kit, and you would make a really good margin on it, so you didn't really charge for the labor to install it, or we didn't, at least. And you did that enough, and you did a good job, and they got you to come back. And then what would happen is they would want more from you, like, I've been thinking about incorporating different things in, smartphones and the like became a thing, and they wanted more help beyond just the install or how to use Word or Excel, and you thought, actually, if that's going to be viable, you need to actually charge them time and materials. And so that was kind of the next evolution: kit, time and materials. And then that was only good when there was a problem, and so you were doing well when there were problems, and then you would have sort of lumpy, time periods, levels of busyness, revenue, and the like. And then so I think the first foray into managed services was actually saying, how about we just spread that cost over 12 months, or in the last 12 months you spent this much with us. How about you pay a smaller amount consistently? And so it became as a service, and then it was things like you want to have after hours help, then sure, that's an extra thing. And then even we experimented with leasing equipment to people, and then everything became a monthly bill. And once you broke the back of the fact that this is actually something you need to invest in, a lot of the other conversations became simpler. So I guess that's when we became an MSP. And you would start to incorporate. I can remember, us building a mail server and then selling mailboxes from it. Yes. And hosting it, and just hoping that it didn't fail. and email became prominent. And
there's a lot of hope in our industry as well.
And if you saw the room that it was in, I didn't feel good about it, but we provided a quality service. And a lot of those things were customer led back then. Yes. And the customer was telling us what they wanted, what they needed, and that was okay. That was like the mother of that innovation, I guess.
And that's one of the things I love about MSPs is the way they solve problems. So you see so many times where MSPs as a community build a solution out of a multiple bits of products because a vendor hasn't been innovative enough to build it yet. Yeah. And then what they do is they put it together, data center, whatever it is, and then they deliver out. And then mailboxes is a really good example of that. Even spam filters and security and all of those kind of pieces. It started off as a kind of shared solution and then was dropped down. And now, ironically, it's kind of going back the same way and going back to more of a SaaS multi-tenanted solution.
Yeah.
Tell me, there was a comment there which I think's good for all MSPs around how you phrased or positioned the managed services to your customers. And, I'm sure there's a lot of MSPs out there who are grappling with that natural growth from break fix through to a full managed service agreement. And bear with me because there's a couple of conversations here, and there's one around recurring revenue and the importance of that, which is tied in.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to talk about positioning the overall cost of a managed services, which looks dearer on a monthly scenario, but comparing that to those ups and downs and the big bills is a really good way of positioning it to our customers. Is review your overall bill you've been charging them, work out where your savings are if you've got some consistency, and then showing them that ROI or that total cost over the 12 months. And you guys saw some success in that?
Yeah, definitely. And that's when you started to, on the other side of proving that to businesses and getting uptake on that, your confidence built that it was like genuinely representing value to the client. And then they would see that you're hiring, you're proactively upskilling, you're improving your service based off the fact that you've got a predictable income as well. If it's not predictable and you're just surviving, month to month, and you can't afford to do those things. And so then the conversation just improves. So it goes from just spreading a cost, predictability of cost, to actually the value that has become possible off the back of them making that investment in you, and you're reinvesting back into them. And once you create that appetite for that strategic relationship, that investment in each other, then things like the security conversation or the voice conversation, the data conversation becomes a lot simpler because it's based on trust. We've already proven that we are delivering value consistently. You've helped our business to grow and for us to be able to invest in ourselves. So when I bring something to you, I'm no longer requiring you to lead me. I'm leading you. And that's when you arrive at that place, it feels good. And it's no longer a technology or an IT conversation. It's a business and it's a peer conversation.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I think there's a really good point there about that symbiotic relationship between the MSP and the end customer. And it's the same as between an MSP and a vendor, right? Is that if all you want to do is have a win and get the cheapest price possible, and for end customers, a lot of them are out there, right, trying to squeeze down. The reality is, we need to be successful together. We need to build a relationship together where I can make enough money to do what we need to do and expand my business and add specialists in, and you need to get a reasonable service. But if it's all one way and you're just squeezing us down on price, and I think it's important for MSPs to have that line and say, look, guys, this is what we do for you. But if I go out of business or I can't afford to put on the right techs to support you, you're going to lose in the long term. So finding those partners that understand partnerships, and working with them, and really with vendors as well. Your relationship with a vendor should not be transactional. And one of the things that the MSP community does well in general, but particularly PowerNet in your time, and currently, is that vendor relationship. It is a true partnership. And I know it gets thrown around, it's a little bit cheesy, but I'm pleased to say that a lot of the people in my phone, in my contacts and the friends, are partners and MSPs that we've built that up by working together.
Yeah, I always talk about it as like partnership behavior. So I quite often, when I'm coaching businesses these days, I ask them really early who their ideal customer is. And so we don't spend a lot of time talking about like the demographics and the geographic side of it, but actually what do they value? What's important to them? And consistent theme that I see in MSPs is that they want to see partnership behaviors. And the interesting thing about partnership behaviors is there's two sides to that. You need to exhibit those in order to actually expect them in return. And quite often, if you model that with your clients, then those who aren't looking for that will kind of self-select and probably do you a favor. But I can remember, and that's why I guess part of the reason why I'm here today is that your conversation and your relationship with me as a partner ahead of becoming mates was you were exhibiting those behaviors, and that's why we connected. And that's like the whole rising tide lifts all boats.
Yep.
Effect is that it wasn't just professional, it was personal. And then the price conversation takes care of itself. And if it's based on value, then it's a really simple conversation. And if you're trying to differentiate on just the what you do, it's really tough. If you just try and differentiate on the service, it's really tough, because then it just becomes about price. But if you're differentiating on why you do it and the experience, then it's a much better conversation, and it's a conversation based on value rather than price.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Two last questions about the MSP time. Number one, when did you realize the importance of MRR, monthly recurring revenue?
I think I understood it early, but it wasn't until I became an owner in the business that I realized. It's kind of it's really feels silly saying it now, but it wasn't until I actually became an owner that I realized that predictability of income wasn't just about paying the bills. It was about being able to reinvest.
Yes.
And I think when the penny dropped for me, it would probably coincided with a massive uptick in MRR, because I was out there checking the
went down a little bit.
Yeah, and I'd go out and have a different conversation with clients, but also a different conversation with the team as well. But you must make good on that. You can't just say it's important to be able to invest back in ourselves
and then not.
Yeah, absolutely. You must then, put your money where your mouth is and invest in your people. And that's, training, it's development, it's better facilities, it's all those sorts of things, beyond just a fruit bowl in the office. But having gone through the office here, months, I do like a fruit bowl,
mad for a fruit bowl, And then the final question I'm going to ask you around that time is, what would you say now to 21-year-old broken ankle Dan? What would advice, and look, we're going to talk more about Without Fear in a minute, so this doesn't have to be industry advice. What would you tell him?
I'd probably tell myself to just place more importance and more focus on who you surround yourself with.
Okay, it's a dig at me. Fair enough.
Yeah, so this was a mistake. No, this is a testament actually to that it took me a while to realize the value of peers and peer relationships and networking within the industry. And I made up for it. I made up for lost time. But, someone who's, I'm an extroverted introvert. So I'm actually an introvert at heart, but I can, in the right forum, a comfortable space, I come across as an extrovert. And I didn't value building those relationships enough early. And upon reflection, I think that would have changed the timeline.
Okay. And it's something, it's kind of like the rock and roll band being in the town and saying the town's wonderful, but the community that we have in the MSP community is one I haven't seen in any other industry. And every industry kind of thinks it's unique. But the way, and I think it's part of the Australian size of our industry that, you can be competitors, but you can still work together in deals. But the knowledge sharing and support and genuine community is something that I'm always pleasantly surprised and pleased to be involved in. And, I do a lot of events, and, I see you at a lot of them as well. And, even now you're going to events with the Without Fear component. It's a nice group. It's nice to get together and see these people and discuss openly challenges and the likes.
Yeah, it is. And it's really unique. And the more I work outside of the industry, the more I realize just how unique that is. And, when we're a subject matter or led industry and not a sales led industry, well, not quite just yet. Then the subject matter is kind of united all of those people. And so it's not, fighting for the crumbs, we're genuinely invested in each other and, sport for choice of, events to go to. And congratulations on the Access 4 event. I I looked in through social media and thought that that'd be awesome, and seeing your head up there on stage just reminded me just how important that is as well, seeing all the people there and that connectedness. And I think I don't think we'll ever lose that, but I think the day we do will be a really sad one if that was to ever happen, because there are a lot of conversations that happen, after the agenda that wouldn't have otherwise taken place.
A lot of mergers and acquisitions come out of those events as well, right? People get bigger and better together.
Yeah.
And look, I think that advice you'd give Hopalong, the 21-year-old with broken ankle, I think that's brilliant advice to anyone out there, is look at your community that's supportive, get to events, particularly the Access 4 events, and build that, network, right? I know it's a bit corny, and you believe it or not, I'm exactly the same, right? I'm an introverted extrovert, and networking, you would strike fear into my heart, like a little part of my soul would die. But it's not networking if you're just talking to friends, right? And that's what this community is.
Yeah, and that's spot on, and the knowing that and embracing that is really important, because you'll look around the room, and in the industry, it's probably, we've just described the majority of the people at those events.
Totally. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about EOS. It's something that I saw you a number of years getting involved in, and when you were telling me what it was, and I'm like, Dan's perfect for this, right? You're real thoughtful, and the way you give advice is really, really good. So give me a snapshot as to what it is and what the benefit is to businesses trying to grow.
Yeah, so EOS is all the things that every business owner and leader knows that they need to do, but either have never done it or never brought it all together.
Yeah.
It's all those simple things all brought into one operating system that allows you to do them easily, with ease and with consistency, and gives you more time to do the things that you love. It's all the accountability and rhythm and things that we generally avoid, thinking that they're going to take more time than what we have, when the frustratingly obvious thing that hits you early in implementing this system is that it gives you more time back, and you should have done it 10 years ago. Yeah. And, I always say, and it's a bit cliche, but the best time was yesterday, and the next best time is today. Wow. Yeah. It's an operating system that is kind of been pulled from all the different, the legends like Jim Collins and Good to Great, for example, and Pat Lencioni and the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. They're great books. Gino Wickman created this system, EOS, where he went and brought all those together and made them specifically for entrepreneurial businesses, which pretty much every MSP I've ever met 100%. Is an entrepreneurial business.
100%. They're about, 70% entrepreneur, or 67% tech, and then the rest of it's entrepreneurial for sure.
Yeah, and it can be a really powerful chemistry, but it gives you that clarity of vision that you can share with everyone. So it's not just in your head, and you get frustrated. Why can't they just see what I want to do? It gives you the tools and disciplines to execute on that vision, and it also, and perhaps most importantly, it allows you to build a healthy team. And a healthy team is not one that never argues. It's one that cares for each other, that is cohesive, that shares values, and therefore, we're rowing in the same direction. Yep. Which is a challenge, and it's probably one of the greatest blessings in my time, 17 years at PowerNet, is that we just had phenomenal people, and we had an ability to attract phenomenal people. And one of the most rewarding things is when I left the business and I exited. Those people stayed, and they weren't there for me. They were there for each other and for where it was headed. And that's not because of EOS per se, but it was made possible because of that system.
Yeah, that mindset. And I think that's why you're a natural fit into that EOS. And I mean, look, the proof's in the pudding. Like, I look at the MSPs that I see around that are really pushing on, and it's surprising. I'm like, this EOS cult, it's everywhere, right? There is so many of them that when you look at that foundation, have that base in there and are doing those regular meetings. I think one of the things I like about it as well is it's not just at that owner level, is it? It's bringing systems through to either develop structure within your sales and operations, but also helping those level managers as well.
Yeah, and that's, that's the greatest privilege, is that we get to work as EOS implementers, which is what we call ourselves. We get to work with the leadership team and sometimes help the owner or the founder or the founders actually work out what the leadership team is.
Yeah.
And I've often said, people have asked me, can you coach me one-on-one? So I've had some business owners and leaders say, can you coach me one-on-one? And I just say, I'd love to, but I'm still getting my own stuff together. I don't feel like I can coach you one-on-one, but your business and your leadership team,
I think that's a bit of imposter syndrome, but anyways, I can accept that.
Yeah, well, maybe it's a preference. I prefer, but I'm pretty comfortable that I know sort of where I'm at, and the impact that it drives through the business takes the pressure off the owners and founders as well, because I'm working with their team. They don't have to harvest everything and then go back and hope that they can relay it through. We're working with them, and I often describe it as being like a bit of a personal trainer. We help them build the plan and then meet with them regularly every quarter to make sure they're doing what they said they would.
Yeah.
And that's the real power of EOS, is the rhythm and the accountability to it. Because everyone, I've often joked, everyone can buy a gym membership. Everyone, if they want, can go to the gym.
Yeah.
So lots of people, for every, say, one person that goes to the gym, there's probably 100,000 that have a gym membership.
That's their model. Everyone turned up on the same day, it's not going to work.
Yeah, exactly. And then for every one that actually goes to the gym, there's probably 50 that have never had a session with a trainer.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that builds that accountability in, and you learn how to do things well. And one of the things that I get to also do is share my experiences, and not always just, hey, this is the playbook of things that have worked. I don't actually do that. I usually say, here's all the things that haven't worked.
Well, the learning in that is super valuable, right? Is having that slingshot of things that haven't worked, and we tried this, and these were my experiences. Yeah. I think, ego is an interesting thing when you're a facilitator, right? Trying not to be, it's like emceeing a wedding. Yeah. Right? It's not about you. Yeah. It's about the people around you who are doing that. And, I look at you, and when I saw what you're doing, I went, oh, absolutely perfect for that. How, in general, how do you manage your ego?
So I just bring myself back to all of the successes and achievements that I experienced in my career. Who was I surrounded with at that time? And there was really none of it was ever like on my own. I was surrounding myself with the right people. And so I keep my ego in check by placing myself at the table with those people that are in the room. And I think of myself as one of those people that are around them. And I know my role. And, I also know that if you give everyone, there's an old saying that anyone can buy paint. It doesn't make you an artist. And you can't just show up with the easel and the palette and all the colors and then just expect people to paint a masterpiece. And also, you can't expect them to paint exactly what's in your head. So I'm teaching them how to paint as best I can. But what they produce is what they produce. Yeah. And it's for them.
Yeah.
And I think if we just acknowledge that, and I quite often find myself where there'll be a conversation about something that I know I've heard that conversation 100 times. If I go to interject, I say to myself, am I doing that for me, or am I doing that for them?
Yeah.
Because if it's for me, I keep my mouth shut.
Shut up. Yeah.
But if it's for them and I think I'm going to stop them hurting themselves, then I do it. And I've had, some businesses work with me over the years that have called me. I've got the call and they've said, Dan, we're going to discontinue working with you because you don't do enough, you don't say enough. And I'll just say, that's a great call. That's a great call, because, we had a misalignment. And maybe that's just a story I tell myself.
Yeah. It's a good story, because I'm all in. Yeah. It's really important, right? Your role really should be like a good umpire or a good referee.
Yeah.
you shouldn't. There should be an afterthought where you go, oh, geez, we didn't hear from the referee much, right? Because if you're managing the game properly and letting it flow, then it runs really well.
Yeah, and I've had some sessions where we always conclude and get feedback, and people rate the session out of 10. And someone said, this was a couple of years ago, oh, that was a 10. You facilitated so well today. That was absolutely a 10. And I thought to myself, you know what? I hardly said a word. I welcomed you here. I said what the agenda was, and I kept the ball moving. But most of the time, I was just sitting back watching people's body language. I'll ask the odd question to keep us on track.
Yeah.
But I think if you can help people to arrive there themselves, then it's going to actually last.
It's a lot more bought in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So, really excited to talk about Without Fear. It's something that, mental health, something I've struggled with, and I'm quite open about my challenges and trying to work through that. And I think the first time I realized that, the smooth, calm, happy Dan Williams, maybe there was other stuff going on behind him, was actually at Perth in a event we did when we spoke about mental health, and you opened up and, really said some beautiful things, which weren't necessarily beautiful as in what they were, but the beauty was in the sharing. And it really, it made me closer to you and made me really feel akin to some of those challenges. And there's always a comfort in knowing you're not doing something on your own.
Yeah.
But then I saw the passion in you around this, and I'm in awe of what you've done around Without Fear. The way you speak about it is really inspiring. So I'd love to hear about your journey to it, what Without Fear is, and what you're hoping to achieve through it.
Yeah, thank you. And I can remember that day, that hotel in Perth, like it was yesterday. And it was a really important day in my journey. And thank you for bringing that up. I was talking about that day specifically very recently, and I'll come back to that. I was always knew that there was something a little bit off personally, and I never really sought answers. I never did any self-work. I didn't go inwards looking for answers. I was generally just go with whatever people said, whether I was an anxious child or not. I came across as a shit, and I was, you can edit that out if you like.
No. I'm laughing about just flashback to all these people saying that to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I used to get told that it was a short temper or whatever, but it was anxiety. And a lazy teenager. I was a depressed teenager, and I'm not sure that Kurt Cobain's music helped me a lot with that, but I still listen to it today, and I'm okay.
Yeah.
And then kind of like I talked about before, stumbled into the IT industry off the back of like that wave. Grateful for that stumble.
Literally with a broken ankle.
Yeah, and we had stairs. So if you listen to this, Jacob, you'll remember those stairs. It was unaddressed, and I came to a realization as recently as last week that's actually why I stopped playing football, and I never really acknowledged that, because I stopped playing football at 26, so I probably had 10 years or so left. My body wouldn't have held up.
Yeah, I mean, 10, sure.
Yeah. And when I see people older than me playing today, I think, wow, okay. And a lot of it was there the whole time. And it wasn't until I had a significant life event, I'll call it, that made me realize it was a few months before that meeting in Perth that I had been struggling for a long time. And I started to then lift my eyes, and I looked around the industry, the IT industry specifically, and I'd had conversations with my business partners, with my team members, and it was like suddenly the lights went on in the nightclub, and I didn't like what I saw, and not in the funny way, like, you tell that story.
Yeah.
But I thought I have to do something about this, and I really didn't know what I could do. But every time I spoke about it, people would come and talk to me, and open up, including you. And then every time that one of those conversations happened, I knew it led to other conversations. And every time I had those conversations, it would hurt a little, but then I would heal.
Yeah.
And I healed more and more every time I had those conversations. And then, without fear was a realization just over 12 months ago that I needed to stop just talking about it, and I needed to start to be deliberate with the action. And so it's a certified social enterprise without fear, and we exist with the goal to help people to live without the fear that stops them speaking up. Because for me, when I unpack it, it was fear.
Yeah.
Fear of not being good enough. And even this is like super silly. I said this recently, that I can remember driving to a client meeting. There was a positive meeting. It was a key account. I was just wheeled in to keep up appearances and thinking, I'm not up for this.
Yeah.
And if they get a sniff of that, they're going to think that I'm not worthy, that I'm not a good leader and a reflection of everyone in the business. And so I made up some crap excuse and didn't go to the meeting. And I avoided that client until I felt well. And the reason I tell that is a few months later, the CEO of that business, multi-billion-dollar business, huge, the biggest client on the books, I could see he was off in a meeting, and I thought, I'm going there.
Yeah.
And I said to him, are you okay? And he just said, I'm not. And that has stayed with me, and I'm getting chills thinking about it now, has stayed with me. And without fear, I know that he was in fear of that conversation. I was in fear of it. And then there was so many other sort of tentacles of different fear-related things. And so without fear, our goal is to start conversations. And we have a goal of 100,000 people living without fear by 2032. That's our BHAG. And that's only made possible through talks, like, at conferences and events, in businesses, sporting clubs. And every time I'm in front of someone, I'm taking that as a responsibility to start the conversations that I'll never hear beyond them.
It's amazing. I'm sure there's a number of people listening to this right now who can relate to that, because, one of the things is we think we're so unique to this, right? We think these are our feelings and no one else would understand. And then everyone else outside is watching this calm, well-presented, happy person, because that's what we project. And sometimes we are, right? Like, it's not an all or nothing. So to get that's the biggest thing I've got out of it, is just the more conversations we have where we have common ground about being high performance, but could still have an anxiety and depression and all these things, make us understand that these things aren't unique, that we shouldn't be fearful of speaking about them, and then talking that out. And that's the thing I commend you on is even in our community, how more commonplace it is for people to talk about their feelings, not just the whole, oh yeah, everything's great, or some little sarcastic thing that's actually a cry for help to say that it's not good.
Yeah.
And then more importantly, giving all of us the tools and the permission when that person does say that, or you see that a little bit off, is to actually ask the question.
And thank you for sharing. And that's really what drives this for me, is that that one conversation. And I did 10 talks last year in the last 12 months. I did 10 talks, and I would have cried 5 times.
Well, you caught me a little bit earlier.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
and I'm comfortable doing that on stage. And someone said to me at an event recently, "You got a bit wobbly up there," and I said, "I know." And I just sat in the silence, and they said, "Oh, are you okay?" And I said, "I am, thank you." And the reason I was wobbly up there is because I looked around the room, and I could have heard a pin drop, and I thought, there are a couple of hundred people in this room, and more than 75% of them are going through something right now. And the statistics are awful, and it's not getting better. But the upside to the statistics are we're measuring it,
Yes.
and we're creating awareness.
Yeah.
And so I won't stop, and I'll keep wobbling on stage.
Can I say, and I don't know if someone's giving you this perspective, but I've been in your audiences a lot, a few times when you've been doing this without Spear Talk. It's amazing to see the acknowledgement on people's faces, right? From when you start to when you finish, you can just see this wave of people who go, oh, that's me, or I've had that, or I understand that and I relate to it. And you can actually see it happening in the room. And that's really powerful. So the first one, I had that, right? I've gone, yeah, geez, I can really relate to this. And, you know, he's saying stuff that, and also challenge you around, is like, why do I feel uncomfortable about it, right? But then to then watch the room and see that same reaction on people it's super powerful, mate.
Yeah, thank you. And that's a privilege actually to have people engaged on an uncomfortable topic.
Yeah.
And it's one that's never lost on me. On World Mental Health Day a couple of weeks ago, I was driving to do a talk at a cricket club here in Melbourne. So one of our ambassadors, Jordan, asked me to come and speak at his cricket club where he's the president. And I was driving on my way, got a call to tell me that one of my teammates had committed suicide or died by suicide.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And I pulled over. I sat there in the car and I said, I'll clean it up for your audience. But I said to myself, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I can't do this. Like, it just doesn't feel like what I should be doing. And then I sat, it was probably only a few minutes. I thought, don't be an idiot. This is exactly why you're doing this. And that person, former teammate, larger than life, hugely successful, bubbly personality, bit annoying, but in a loving sort of way.
Yeah.
Legend of a footballer as well. And I went, and it was the most powerful talk that I've ever done. And, you know, like that room, you could have cut the air with a knife. And there was a smaller audience, but I could just feel not just the engagement, but the connection with the people. And I thought, you know, it was the 12-month anniversary of the business starting, of Without Fear starting. And it was just like, instead of being just a reflection on 12 months of the things that we have done and achieved, it was actually, let's launch into the next 12 months.
Let's go hard.
And, you know, I don't always understand the universe, but I believe in it, and I was exactly where I needed to be
at the time. And it's powerful to be able to take those, you know, terrible situations and try and do some good. And, you know, I'm always just dismayed about, you know, how many connections we have as people to or individuals to people we've lost to suicide. And I, you know, in my time in the industry, I've lost a number of them, of staff who work for me or people we know. And, you know, you go through all of those emotions around, you know, sadness and frustration and anger and you know, guilt that they couldn't talk to you. And, you know, anything we can do to have people, give people the tools to be able to process what they're going through and understand that, you know, nothing's ever as good as it seems and nothing's ever as bad as it seems. And, you know, if we can have one person just say, hey, I'm not doing well, or have one person notice that someone's not doing well and ask that question, then, you know, everything you're doing is be worth it a million times. One of the things I got out of what you're doing when you're talking around Without Fear is it's not just awareness, it's tools that you use after. Are you okay? Right? Can you give us a little bit of idea of that? Because that was the powerful bit. When you took us on that journey, right? You're like, these are the stats. Fish, you know, this is how you could be feeling. This is how I was feeling. Yeah, you're right. Now this is something you can do about it and with it. Can you talk us through some of those tools?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I try and do every time I deliver a talk on mental health, is to leave people with something practical. Because there is no shortage of people sharing their story these days, and that's fantastic, and I love it. And maybe because I engage heavily with it. I hear them and I take them all in because I feel like it, it's all these points of connection. But where we can do better is actually to equip people to have conversations. And people often fear the response if they ask if someone's okay. And the most important thing is to acknowledge if someone says they're not, to acknowledge that that's probably something they've been sitting on for a long time. So if you can acknowledge that, then that is the most critical part, because everything you do after that is made easier by you saying, hey, that must have been a burden to carry, and thank you for trusting me enough to speak. And then from there is actually about being present. So it's such a busy world, and there are so many things going on around us. And I read a book recently called Driven. It talks about it being a constant state of partial concentration. And if we're in a partial concentration when we've just acknowledged the significance of them speaking up, we must be present. And I can remember as a business owner and leader, having someone tell me that they weren't okay. And I looked around, I thought, this is not the right space for us to have this conversation. Let's go for a walk. And if you can't be present where you are, then move.
Yep.
Have your phone away.
Yep.
Engage, and then truly listen. And I coach junior football, and so I've just had 12 months in trying to coach people on a sport, but actually just trying to teach them to listen. and so we've won the grand final, but I don't know whether they actually are better listeners or not.
Well, congratulations on that,
thank
at least.
you. But I say, 2 ears, one mouth. And what I need you to do right now is to use your 2 ears. And that's what you need to do, and to listen and not say anything. In fact, you can get drawn into a human response of comparing suffering.
Yeah.
And when someone says, I'm not okay, and I haven't been for a while, I've been sad or down or off or disinterested, and you say, yeah, me too, you've just reduced what they're going through. So you just need to listen. No diagnosis.
That was a really big point for me, right? It's because your instinct could be to try and relate, but you're diminishing that big impact. So just listen, be present and listen.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can't relate, then the pressure's off, because you don't have to. I've had lots of people, I could say 100% of the time, when I've delivered a talk, there's been someone who's come up to me and said, oh, look, I've never experienced any of that, but thank you. That was a great talk. I've never experienced any of it. And I'm like, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. You've got these tools now. And the last part, after you've listened and you've avoided diagnosing or comparing suffering or saying, yeah, me too, you've just genuinely listened, is to say, hey, what's happening now? Have you considered talking to a doctor? Or have you spoken to your partner about this, or your kids, or whoever? And is it okay if I check in on you next week? And do it.
Yes.
And that's all that the other person really needs. And if you stumble the acknowledgement, that's fine. If the space isn't exactly right, or you felt a little bit distracted, that's okay also. But you must listen. And you must listen with authenticity, and then just get clear on the next steps. And whenever I make that commitment to someone, I put it in my calendar.
Yep.
Check in on Pete.
Which you should do every couple of weeks, by the way. Just check in on Pete.
I will. I'll put
you.
a recurring reminder in there now. And jokes aside, I never miss those. And if I do, I make up for it. And I've had lots of conversations that I had no idea where they were going to go, but I took the pressure off myself to actually navigate it, to just listen, and then to make sure that they knew what they were doing next. And I'm able to share personal experience. I'm able to say, I've been there, I've done that. Here's what I did, but I don't.
Yeah.
I tell my story if I'm invited to, and let people connect. But then that I'm not okay conversation, I'm pretty comfortable with navigating that. And ultimately, if someone listening to this picks up on just elements of that, then that would make me incredibly happy. But it doesn't need to be like a checklist in your mind that you have to bounce through. Yeah.
Look, and I can tell you now what people have, because I have, right? And the big ones for me is, you know, don't, if you do relate, it's not about you. Listen, don't, oh yeah, me too, and yada yada, because, you know, it's something that I do as well. And the other one, because I do it a lot, is a joke.
Yeah.
And that was one I took away from it, as you said, is that don't make a joke. Don't try and be to bring some lightness to it. This is an important thing, and it is a serious thing, and so to try and stay away from that. And I took those. They were the two things I took away, and I'm equipping myself in on that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. There's just one thing that I will share that is a visual. I'm a visual person, and there's a book, Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, and I refer to it all the time. But this part in the book in particular brought me to tears when I was listening to it, is that people that are sitting in the dark don't want to be brought into the light. They need you to learn to sit in the dark with them.
Yeah, wow.
And then when they're ready, bring them to the light. And it's not serving anyone by saying, hey, all you need to do is
cheer up, come out yeah.
Go for a walk.
Yeah, you go for a walk.
She'll be right.
Have a banana.
She'll be right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much power, and you do so much for yourself as well, being comfortable sitting in the dark with them. And, you know, I'm by no stretch of the imagination perfect, and I haven't nailed all of this. It's a journey. But that visual I play in my mind anytime someone says to me, hey, can we chat? I will ask them where they are comfortable having that conversation. And then when I go there, I don't try and lift their mood immediately. I assess where they're at first, and then ease them if that's appropriate. And all these things just take pressure off both of you.
Mate, super powerful. And again, I think, you know, you might have stumbled into IT and stumbled into this, but you're definitely where you should be. So your personal experience and the way you can articulate, and just that, you know, EOS, MSP, everything that's built you into the person you are and what you're doing right now, you're very much aligned as to, you know, you see, you go, that person's perfect for that, or, you know, that person's in the right role, and the passion I see out of you and the work you're doing. So thank you. You've certainly helped me, and I'm sure there's significant people who have been helped on this and everything you're doing. Where can people find out more about Without Fear?
So one of the best places is to engage with us on social media. So we're on all the platforms, Instagram at Without Fear Co, and you'll find the rest from there. We're on LinkedIn as well, which, you know, is probably our most engaged platform. But we're withoutfearco.com is our website. And we do have apparel that we sell, the hoodie that I've got on here, and we have other things. And any revenue that we generate, 100% of the profits go to mental health projects. And as I found out from my accountant last week, 115% of the profits last year went in to mental health projects, because I have a problem saying no.
Brilliant.
And I prefer to make that investment in the effects that I may never see. But this is not a revenue, profit generating exercise. It's a give back, and anything that you give, you can trust that it will be given back. But there's no obligation there, but just engage, have a conversation. If you see something on our social media that lands with you, engage with it, share it. That will help drown out some of the rubbish that's on social media.
Yeah.
And it'll also might just be something that someone needs. Yeah.
Brilliant. And we will put all those links into the header for this, so it'll be all connected on. If anyone wants to reach out to you directly in relation to EOS or anything in general, where we find you?
Yeah, so I've got a bit of a catch-all site, which is danwilliams.coach. But you can, I'm happy for people to email me as well. So it's dw@independenteq.com.au, which is a bit of a mouthful. but you'll find me. Most common way people actually interact with me is just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Get on there.
LinkedIn. I'm on there consistently, and just seeing what Pete's been up to, and I respond to everything there. I see that as an obligation as well to make sure that I keep showing up, and it's one that I'm grateful for.
Fantastic. Look, mate, I really appreciate your time. Thoroughly enjoyable chat about all facets of it. I know the Without Fear is there's passion and there's an importance and there's a reverence around that. Love to hear your stuff around where you came from and hop along.
Taking me down memory lane.
Hop along with a bit of fluff on his chin and 21-year-old in his pocket protector, and then the EOS stuff, which is it's really seen a lot of work around that and some businesses really thriving. So, mate, bring it in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it, and thank you to everyone for listening in and watching us. And really appreciate your time, Dan. Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.